Hello and welcome to part 4 of the news and enhancements of RAW2 version 33. Today I would like to discuss some of the new modeling functions. First of all, the rotate function. You already know the rotate function in RAW2, but it has been extended, so now you can create multiple copies at regular angular intervals. So you can create rotational symmetric elements such as different support trunnions here on a vessel. So in this model I already edited a small trunnion here, and the vessel is supposed to have 4 of these trunnions, so I will use the rotate function to copy it. I use select start to end to select the part that I want to model. I use the edit rotate function and click on the center node. Then I specify the angle between 2 copies. This would be 90 degrees, and then I say I want to create copies, and if I take 3 more copies I would have my full symmetric system, and I just press OK. And now I just have to remove the boundary condition from the center point, and I have my vessel positioned on the 4 trunnions. Next I would like to discuss some convenience features in the new version RAW2 33. First of all, the circle function now allows you to create a circular structure with a distribution or angular distribution around a center point with a given radius, and you can also give a gradient to create this spiral kind of helix. And so if you want to, for example, model this as a heat exchanger spiral, then of course you would need to enter some support conditions, and they're usually equally spaced. So the next feature, the automatic insertion of boundary condition, can help greatly, because now you can select a line and say you would create boundary conditions every so and so such a distance. So you say you want to have every 3,500 millimeters, and you get all 3.5 meters of support of the same type. Very convenient. On the other hand, if you've created these boundary conditions, you can also delete them. You select the part of the system and then use the function delete boundary condition. So let's start with the circle function. First of all, I will have to select the correct diameter for the pipe, so I use DN40 here. Then I use the edit circle function. I click on the center node first, specify the plane, so this would be horizontal plane with a vertical normal axis. Next step is to specify the radius here, so I use 500. The angular distributions every 22.5 degrees, a node, and I also make a gradient, so I get an helix, and I just say OK. Here's my new loop. Now I select this new line, and I will just hide all the other parts first. I use the list functions to convert all the bend nodes here into just straight line nodes. I don't want to use the bend function. And now I select my line and copy it many times. So, and the next step would be to create my support conditions. First of all, I will check what is the good distance. So I select from here to here. This would be 90 degrees, and I will use the edit show property of selected segment function to identify the length. This would be the length. I copy it for later use, and now I select all, use the rigid support function, click on the first node, and now I can just give the distance that I just measured and create equally spaced support. Now my support type, I will use slide support with a guide, and you just have to, maybe I can specify some friction and also change maybe the stiffness. So all these supports will have the same function all around the pipe. So here you can see I've got 4 support regions all in the same distance. And now if I got it wrong, I can still select everything, use the delete function, select boundary condition, choose the rigid supports, and just remove all the supports in one single action. The next point of my list of new handling functions in RAW233 would be the simplified closing of the gap between two sections. So the intersection point is determined automatically. If you have two segments, you know that they intersect, but you don't know where exactly. You can now use the connect segment function and just click on those two segments and they will be prolonged until they intersect. And both sections are prolonged as necessary, and unnecessary nodes are removed. So let's continue with our helix here, and let's make the connections. And somehow I've already drawn the connecting lines, but now I don't know where the exact intersection point is. I only know that this end should be connected to this branch and this end should be connected down here. So I use the edit connect segment function. I click on the first segment to connect and the second part that corresponds. So the intersection point will be calculated here, and I repeat it on this segment with this segment, and so the connection is done. Now this works with 90 degrees angles, but it also works with any other angle. So for example, in the next segment here, this is a 45-degree angle. I can just click on the two segments and connect them. In the renumber node function, you have now the additional option to only renumber the nodes that are currently visible. This allows you to give specific names to different branches and still have them in the correct order. So back to our heat exchanger loop, I still have the rest of the system hidden behind here, and now I would like to renumber this loop. So first I would use edit renumber nodes. I would say that I want to consider only the node names that are displayed here. I choose to number them starting from 1 with an increment of 1, but the node numbers should start with a short e in front of the number. And now I click on the start node and, for example, indicate this as a start node and say go. And now I've got a nice numbering from E1 to E116. Now if I bring back the other segments, show all segments, I can see that my previous numbering has not been affected. And I still have my E numbers up here. In the load case dialog, we now have the load cases with categories. So the primary load category, secondary load category, occasional load cases are all now in subcategories. And also you can now order the load cases after you've created them by just dragging and dropping them. This allows you to give it a certain order to more easily find your way in many load cases. You can also select more than one load case and delete a package of them with one single click. Concerning the spring design, there used to be a limitation that if you block springs in some load cases, you could not include them in the same extreme value calculation with a blocked and unblocked situation. So that would usually mean you have to do two evaluations. This limitation is now no longer necessary. Also, if you have created a branch by drawing two lines together, now you have access directly to the internal pressure analysis of this artificially created T without specifying using the T function in RAW2. So in the load case dialog, you can see the categories here now, and you can also see the different load cases, and you can see that you can select them, move them down or up. So you sort your order. You can also select many load cases and just delete them, and delete many load cases with one click. Concerning the internal pressure analysis, you know that you can click on the component and select the T and do the internal pressure analysis here. But now it's also possible to use this function on a T that was created just by drawing two lines. So just a branch connection here. I have access to the internal pressure analysis and can bring up the internal pressure design for this component and to check that the T is okay. Okay, so this would be the program for today. Thanks for watching, and hope you tune in next time.